Hello everyone and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI. Today we'll be going over recruiting myths. Now you may be saying, what kind of recruiting myths are you going to be talking about? We're going to try to cover all of them, and if we feel like we missed one, please leave in the comments down below on what you feel like we missed, and we will get to it in another podcast. But to start us off, today, like I said, we're going to be going over recruiting myths. So KPI is producing a very large number of collegiate athletes. Obviously, every athlete that comes into this building, whether it be baseball, football, softball, right, their main goal is to get to college, whether it be whatever level that athlete can get to. There is problems that come along, right? There are many factors and the bad actors that distract aspiring athletes from reaching these collegiate level goals. And we have two amazing people here to talk about it, Erik and Dan. So Erik, just start off with kind of the big one, and that's showcases.
The thing that showcases is when showcases first came out when I was in high school, it was like a brand new thing, and they were valuable. There was no internet and videos to be sent and those types of things that we take for granted these days. And so when there was like a regional showcase and there was colleges there, like that was a very special opportunity. That wasn't normal. And then what happened, just like happens with most things in business, is then it gets, people grab onto the name and it gets totally washed out. And so that's kind of the thing now with showcases is these scouting services and these showcase providers, they're just blasting that name and calling everything a showcase. Like someone ran a showcase last week in the Central Valley, and it's a recruiting dead period right now.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of the stuff that we'll probably talk about today is like those are the bad actors, basically just tricking people to sign up for it or telling a 13-year-old they're going to a showcase, And so really, there are valuable showcases out there, and the people in the know, like, hey, this is a good one, and we really tell our families to kind of lean on us to kind of give them advice on those, because basically not only personally if they go to a showcase that's bad, it's a waste of their time and money, but it's also feeding into the system that we want to kind of knock down. Like we want the bad actors out of this process, so if you keep going to their showcases and giving them money, they're going to keep running them, so we try to combat that with education and sound advisement to kind of get them to go to the right events, basically.
Absolutely.
I think the term showcase in itself is somewhat of a misnomer. Like what is the purpose of the showcase? What is the purpose of you going to it? And I think majority of athletes think I'm going to go so I can play in front of college coaches who are going to I'm getting exposure so that I have an opportunity to show them, hey, I'm good at baseball.
Yeah.
And showcases of all different types of forms, I guess. Like you can go to a showcase, and this happens on the softball world, where you just gather data and that's it. The data doesn't do anything for you; just tells you, all right, here's where you're at, and then maybe they give you a sheet that says, oh, here's how good you are relative to the other players that we've had come through our showcases.
Yeah.
Or another showcase is you go, hey, we're going to play games, but the competition you play against is nowhere near the level that needs to truly showcase how good of a player you are. So I think the showcase is in a way it's becoming this misnomer where it's like it's almost turning into like, hey, I'm just going to the showcase because I can pay for it and I just get to be there. Like it has nothing to do with actually helping you achieve or solve the problem of showing a college coach you're good enough to play at their, to contribute to their lineup.
And we also know, and we hit on it last week, that recruiting has changed. Like exposure is not a problem anymore.
Yes.
Like any kid in the nation can sign up for anyone's camp and go to it on their college campus with those coaches. Any kid in the nation can make their own video and send it directly to any coach in the nation. So, again, the idea of showcases 20, 25 years ago was great, but this is a different world now. And so now people are taking advantage of the the anxiety and the stress that come in the recruiting process to kind of like tell families that this is the way to get exposure to recruit, and it's just not the case.
Yeah. And I think the I don't mean to cut you off. Like the problem was like getting in front of these coaches because that was the problem. Now the problem is being good enough. Yeah. Being good enough and showing that the being seen is not the limiting factor. Being good enough to play at that level is the limiting factor.
Yeah. So playing devil's advocate just a little bit, what do you say to a family, right? And we talk about this on prior podcasts with the commitments and the range of athletes that we do have. Like you said, if you're not in the know, these things look amazing, right? I get to go to my kids to a college campus. He's going to get seen hypothetically in front of college coaches. If you don't know the dates, you really don't know at all. And then the kid gets to walk away with a t-shirt saying, I did this showcase. It's the greatest showcase ever. How would you give advice to the parents that aren't technically in the know, really how to look for themselves and be able to say, okay, I can confidently say that I'm getting my kid better, either going to the showcase or taking him out of it so he can develop?
Ask us. Like lean on us. Like we are. It's going to sound a little cocky, but we are the experts on the field, right? So, it's just like anything else. Like if my car breaks down, I'm not going to act like I know how to fix it. I'm not an expert in that field. Yeah. So like we know the good ones and we know the bad ones. We know the levels and what we do with our families is like give them a ton of education on the front end and then open us up for advisement so they can feel comfortable asking us. And it actually can be slightly uncomfortable for a family to ask me like, hey, Eric, should I go to this showcase or should I go to this college's team camp? And I say, I don't know, that doesn't fit your level. But again, honesty is going to be the best way to kind of limit the use of the finite resources, time, energy, and money. That time, energy, and money is not limitless, and they need to spend it at the right places if they want to get to the collegiate level. And going to random showcases with Yahoo's running them is not the best way to get to the college level. Yes. I can promise you that.
No, very true. And so just on the topic, and if you get offended, you need to take a look in the mirror, but Eric mentions Yahoo coaches, right? So we talk about these guys with big egos that are and you see a lot of it in the stuff where a kid commits and the one coach that had him for one tournament goes, I made that kid, right? So how do we kind of, and it's obviously it's easy to say just leave your ego at the door when you go to coach, but it's way more complex than that. How do we kind of fix this issue with the egotistical coach?
If a coach tells you to play a tournament with them because it's a good exposure tournament, run the other way. If a coach tells you, here are the people that I've had go to the college level and I'm the reason why, run the other way. Yeah. Like that's like, if something sounds like ego and something sounds overinflated, it probably is. So I mean, it's kind of that simple, and this is what I say all the time. Like, we have some big time guys that train here.
Yes.
They didn't go to any showcases. They didn't go play random travel ball tournaments because someone said they needed exposure. They were good enough.
Yes.
When you're good enough, this process is way easier, and we keep showing it over and over again that there is a right way to do this.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes people don't listen because they want to throw a simple solution on a complex problem. I just need to go play for this coach and he'll get me there. And that's not how this works.
Yeah.
I'd add to the running away, and something that we are very, very relatively strict on is the ownership language. Like I think that's another red flag.
When you say ownership, you mean ownership of the athlete?
Of the athlete. Okay. Like I that's my guy.
Yeah.
That's my player. That's again, I'm in control of this person, and I'm the driving force that made them into what they are. And I think that's another quick and easy red flag that you can know right away that, hey, like, this might not be somebody that I want influencing my child, because what they're doing is they're removing the control from the athlete and saying, hey, I control your recruitment. I control your development. I control your playing time. I control your dreams.
Yes.
And if you don't do what I want, if you don't pay me what I want to be paid, then I will destroy your dreams.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sounds brutal, but it's the truth. It happens probably in every commoditized sport at the youth level. People want control, and it's something that I think that there'll be much larger consequences to being around that kind of coach, and we're seeing it at the collegiate and professional levels. Mental health issues are real. A lot of athletes are having the ramifications of it, and it starts when you're 10 to 14 years old.
Yeah.
So.
And just to make kind of like, again, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit just to kind of keep the conversation alive, but we as a facility, right, we obviously post a lot of stuff on social media. Like you said, we have a high level guys. A lot of people may be watching this podcast and go, you're posting the same thing.
Yep.
But talk about how we don't, and if you watched the last podcast, you got a little bit of this of the way Eric told the Quinn Larson story and how you had to slow play. There was no real, I need you to go to this showcase and this one. You had a chance, and if he wanted to, you would have told him no, right? Gave him the honesty. But talk about how, and obviously that's one athlete out of many that same situations happened to. How is that ability to kind of take your ego out of it and say, I know you can do this right now, but you shouldn't?
It's really the trust that's built up between us and the family and the athlete. Like they trust us. And when you've been around a long time and you see results and you're able to use data to kind of guide decisions and know, like, hey, I am getting better. Hey, I am ready for this level now. There's a lot of trust that's built up, and for every big-time guy we have in here, there's 5 guys that commit to the Division II and Division III level. Like the last 2 weeks, we've had a kid get cut from his high school team that committed to a Division III school, one of his target schools. We had a kid commit to a fantastic Division II school. That's an incredible fit for him academically and socially. We had a kid commit last night to a Division II school. That is just, it's an incredible spot. He's going to get coached well. He's going to love his experience, So the trust of hey, this isn't just about the big time guys. This is about every kid that walks in this room has the opportunity to play college baseball.
Yeah.
And we know that you can kind of help us with that process, and you're going to be honest with us.
Yeah. So now, Dan, I'll ask you kind of that same question. So we talk about trust a lot, and how, and obviously this is where it's going to go to, but how important is that first assessment and that first meeting with everybody to kind of let them understand this is what we're about, this is how we do it. We're not just going to throw you into the fire and make it work. We're going to be that fire for you so you can start to kind of lift yourself up.
Yeah. I think it's at the end of the goal setting component, I make it very clear, hey, we don't guarantee any results here.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't guarantee any results is we have no control over the results. You as the athlete have complete control. And we want to get them back in the center of this entire process so that they know, hey, if I want to play D1, if I want to play D3, if I want to play JUCO ball, if I just want to make my varsity team, I'm in control of this. And I'm going to put forth the work ethic that is required to achieve those goals. I'm going to push myself mentally. Yeah. And then I think an area that we do support is, hey, we're going to be that positive voice, that positive force in your life that says, hey, this is worth it. You can do it. Here's the plan. Execute, and then we'll see where we're at. And then again, we I think the cherry on top is we'll utilize our data to show you, hey, yeah, this is actually working. So I think that trust piece, it starts in that assessment of hey, I care about you, I care about your goals, and I'm going to do everything I can, and we as a staff, to help you achieve them. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it's up to you.
Yep. So next topic. I mean, this kind of ties into the next topic of misinformation just a little bit, but talk about how, and this has become a real big thing, like we talked about since after COVID, of scouting services. So being able to get your information on a website or whatever service it may be, have them do the scouting for you, and then it's essentially all good and good. But talk about how that can be very misleading.
It's extraordinarily misleading, and their business model is built on misleading the general population. So anytime an athlete commits, you'll see these scouting services be like, oh, he was at this event in 2020 and blah blah blah. Little will they say that they go to the big time guys and they offer them free spots at their showcases so they can say that they were there. So it's 100% misleading. And so same concept, right? We as humans like to throw simple solutions to complex problems. All right, getting recruited is super complex, and so scouting services kind of feast off that anxiety and miseducation that families have on this process. And so not only do they kind of do what I just said, but they only say good things, and this is kind of something that just drives me crazy. That they post on Twitter. I still remember the first time a prominent scouting service came into Northern California. And I was, we were on the road with the team and hanging out with the parents. And then one of the parents figured out that their kid got posted on Twitter. I've never seen a mad rush of 40 and 50-year-olds trying to figure out how to get Twitter on their phone because they want to see their kids on the internet, And they feast on that feeling that parents have, and then that's how they sell profiles. And so they don't put hey, Johnny was really average today at the X, Y, and Z showcase, we think he's got a low-level JC potential on him. They've never posted anything like that. They only post oh, it's projectable, #uncommitted, and all this stuff. And it's really just complete nonsense, but it looks good on a phone. It looks good on a computer. It's tight and buttoned up from a business presentation point of view. And it gets families because they don't have the education that's not how the recruiting process works. And I'll say it again, and I've already said it twice on this podcast. We have big time guys in here, and we have Division II, Division III JC guys that train in here.
Yes.
They don't have scouting services. They don't need them. The 60 Division I guys that have committed in here since we've opened, they didn't do a scouting service. The 30 2023 signees that we'll have a signing day party for in a couple weeks here, they didn't do scouting services. They were just good enough, and they followed a good plan.
Yeah, I think just to kind of round it out, I think I go the opposite direction. We're having scouting services pop up, and they're basically Instagram influencers who played a sport at a high level and say, hey, I'll help get you recruited, and basically they turn into a life coach.
Because I have more followers than you.
Or I played at a high level, so I know exactly how this all works, so I'll help and type your emails for you and cater your social media posts and get all the right hashtags and maybe tag a bajillion coaches on Twitter because coaches are always scouring Twitter for prospects. I think that's the scale goes in either direction. Either I play the rat race of like, okay, I'm going to go to all these showcases, get my numbers, and hopefully as my numbers get better, coaches want me. Or I go to like the fixer, right? Oh, you're going to fix my problem. You played at the Division I level, and I want my kid to play Division I softball, so I'm going to pay you a bunch of money every month to hop on Zoom calls with my daughter and talk about how you're going to help them get recruited. And it always circles back to like limited time, energy, and money. And are those things helping you improve to the point that you can show that you actually are good enough to play at the next level?
And the crazy thing is, and I know we need to move on after this, but like we could totally sell that product here. Like we have such a great track record of moving kids to the collegiate level. We have so many guys that train here that have done that. Like we could sell the crap out of that, and people would buy it in gobs, but we don't because it's not right. Like it's not the right thing for the athlete. It's not honest and truthful. All right, and so that's why we stay far away from that.
Yeah. And so just to kind of round out the topics, right? And that, we said this before, but a lot of people like to throw simple answers to complex issues, right? And most of that is because of the information that they don't know. They're just throwing things at the wind because, I mean, I've heard that this works, so let's try it. I've heard that works, let's try it. Talk about some of the other things and then like kind of wrapped around in this whole blanket of showcases, recruiting myths, and kind of stuff like that most people kind of just shove to the side, whether it be dates of schedule, simple stuff like that. Just kind of mention that part.
Well, it's the non-sexy stuff, and that's what I say all the time to families. Like the sexy thing of going to a showcase or a scouting service event and getting yourself posted on Twitter, like that's sexy and you get to retweet it and stuff. Like that's not it though. Yeah. What's it is like all the grinding to get good enough. It's doing research on like, hey, do I academically fit at this school? It's knowing, do I financially fit at the school? Because, hey, they don't give out full rides at baseball right now, you know? It's taking campus visits. It's talking to people and like, figuring out your metrics. Like, hey, like, I want to be a Division I center fielder, but I run a 7.460 and my exit velocity is 85 miles an hour. Okay, I'm not a Division I center fielder. I've done the research and I'm realistic about this stuff. I've done the educational side of things. So, you know, the best way to kind of navigate this process the right way is, one, have really good people advising you. Like, again, like find experts in the field that have a great track record that can give you honest feedback. Two, educate yourself. Like, hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get to the levels I want to be at? Where am I at right now? And then three, and this is if I could highlight and put fireworks around it, get good enough. This process of recruiting and placement isn't that hard when you're good enough.
Yeah. Well, they will find you if you know how to play. And so if you have listened to this podcast and you want to find the next steps, right, it's in development. I mean, we talked about it from both sides, strength, baseball, recruiting. Understand that development is where you need to be, right? You don't need to be at all these showcases like we just talked about. The overarching message in this podcast is understand how to get good enough. Whether that be D2, whether that be JC, whether that be D1, understand where you need to be as an athlete. And so what I want to touch on last is give people some stories of just success in the generalization of development. Obviously, we touched on it last week in the podcast of a lot of success stories through commits, but I just touched on some athletes in this facility that have decided to choose development, and it's gone in their favor.
I think we can run the spectrum of the Power 5 guys, the Landon Stumps and the Gabe Gackles, the Quinn Larsons that have just incredible off the charts work ethics and belief in what we do. And again, they didn't go do showcases and events. It's always funny when I see them listed on like some random scouting services like top 10 in the state. Like they've never seen that guy play before. There's going off someone's Twitter or something. To those guys, to the Michael Moriarty's, the kid that got cut from his high school team in the spring and immediately drove down here and said, I want to start training. We're like, you need to schedule an assessment first, To the Jaden Minguses, the kid that maybe was doing the circuit a little bit, he was doing the showcases, and then like, hey, like this isn't working for me. I'm gonna go on development, and he blows up and finds a great spot. So, and then the one we had last night, which I'm sure we'll talk of soon, a kid that's been around since he's 13 years old and training full time that found his home, and it's just, it gets me every time. Every time a kid commits and tags us on Instagram, like I lose it. Like it's when you get to see a kid's dream come true.
Yeah, it's.
Like I do it for free,
Yeah.
Yeah, Well, I just want to work backwards just for a second. I think it's been funny. We're going to do another podcast on this exact thing, the myths of development.
Yeah.
Like, what does it actually mean to develop and improve your skill set? So this is my call on the shot. We'll do this probably in like 6 months to a year. We'll have another podcast on this. But yeah, I think as a whole, the varying degrees, every athlete has an opportunity to get better.
Yes.
Every athlete has goals and dreams. They just need to be honest with themselves to figure out who do you truly trust. And I think a way to figure out who is trustworthy and credible is vetting out that process and talking to people, talking to their families, talk to the families that train with us and say, hey, why did you choose KPI? Why is your child there? Do you feel like they got better? What do you think had the biggest influence on their ability to achieve their goals? I hope the answer is the child themselves, but I do know that our systems and the way we go about things is allowing more and more athletes of every degree to achieve their goal of playing at the next level. And I think it's like uncomfortable for us to call some of this stuff out, but it's just getting to the point where it's like, okay, we got to talk about this stuff.
This is true.
Because it's baseball and recruitment and softball recruitment, sports, collegiate recruitment as a whole is getting more and more difficult, and it's because of some of the things that we touched on today.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys very much for listening to Talking Points with KPI. If you feel that you've been attacked in this podcast, please take a step back, look in the mirror, and understand what you may be doing wrong. But understand that... What?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If something we say that offends you in something like this, you are the problem.
Yes.
You know, like nothing that we just said should offend anyone.
No.
So, yeah. I'm good with that. You know?
Absolutely. So understand, right, if you are also looking for individualized development that's technology fueled, please go to kpimh.com and sign up for your session today. You'll be greeted with an assessment. We'll understand Dan, Eric, Chase, Justin, Cameron will either take you, and they'll be gladly to help you get your process started here at KPI. If you have any more interest, please comment below on our YouTube at Kinetic Performance Institute. And just let us know what you want us to talk about, right? We got a lot of stuff we want to talk about. We got a lot of stuff planned. So be on the lookout for that on all of our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. And we'll see you guys next time.